ISAC Radio, your civilian citizens dedicated to exposing domestic and international terrorism. Hello everyone, I'm Jesse Beltran, your host of ISAC Radio, the International Center Against the Abuse of Covert Technologies. I'm from the United States, and along as your co-host is Lars Drudgaard of Denmark. We are honored to be participating in the United We Win Marathon Weekend, emphasizing all to don't buy, don't comply, standing up against the institutions of corruption and oppression. Welcome back, ISAC listeners. My name's Jesse Beltran of the United States, along with my co-host Lars Drudgaard. Today is April 13, 2013, and we have many topics to cover. Mainly, particularly, some very disturbing articles that have been surfacing in the media today from university institutions along with military and other research facilities. One disturbing article that I'd like to talk about today is 6 creepy new weapons that the police and military use to subdue unarmed people. The International Center Against the Abuse of Covert Technologies was formed for the purpose of helping and aiding individuals across the globe who are suffering from the use of experimental technologies that are basically causing people to suffer and being tortured. What's interesting about this article, these 6 new weapons, they call them non-lethal weapons, and they're used for crowd control. And a lot of these weapons have been banned for warfare. But it's interesting that in the United States here particularly, it is being used against United States citizens. And the U.S. is the forefront for international arms development, and a lot of efforts include remarkable assortments of technologies which look and sound like they belong in Hollywood science fiction thriller. But science fiction isn't fiction anymore. I'm going to go ahead and list a few of those type of weapons that have been developed. One of those is an invisible pain ray. It's the holy grail of crowd control. It's the active denial system, and I know this has come up and surfaced before in previous shows that we've done. The way it works, it projects the microwave beam or electromagnetic radiation to heat the skin of its targets. It'll heat up to 130 degrees. This creates an intolerable burning sensation, forcing those in its path to instinctively flee. It's a response that the Air Force dubs the goodbye effect. Now, the Pentagon Joint Non-Lethal Weapons Program says this capability would add to the ability to stop, deter, and turn back an advancing adversary, providing an alternative lethal force is not available. And now, the problem with this is not only does it cause very focal burns, it does cause 2nd and 3rd degree burns, which can be very devastating. And again, this is something that is being enacted by and being promoted by law enforcement and our military here in the United States to use against our own citizens. Lars, what do you think about that?
I think it's horrible, and it just shows the direction of control the government wants to take, and this is actually a worldwide thing. It is gradually accelerating, and that's granting more and more powers to those in control and government entities, but we rarely ever see the reversal of any powers granted to any government agencies or authorities. So once they have been given a green light for any kind of excessive use of power, they usually only further increase those. They never decrease these powers.
Yeah, another weapon they talk about is this laser blinding dazzler. In this article, it's the Personal Halting and Stimulation Response Rifle, or PHASR, PHASR. It's a massive laser shooter, and what it does is it's part of the National Institute of Justice's Joint Lethal Weapons Program and the Office of the Secretary of Defense, and it was being developed by the Air Force and Research Laboratory. Interesting enough, what it does is it'll actually blind you. And the reason they're able to use it, because prior to this, under previous protocols in wartime or engagement, these types of things were outlawed if it would permanently blind someone. Because this one actually temporarily blinds you, and again, this may not always be the case. In some cases, it may permanently blind someone. But these are the types of things that are being developed again, to use against citizens who are protesting civilly and peacefully against things they believe that are wrong. And I don't know. I never fathomed, being an American citizen, that I would see the day that these types of things would be used against American citizens, basically as a bunch of guinea pigs to further develop and maximize the potential use of these types of weapons. We're entering in a new demographic, a new paradigm. As we look at this, Lars, we also are seeing some other developments in the area of neuroscience. As you know, what ISAC does is we do basically RF testing for victims who believe that they're exposed to non-consensual experimentation or otherwise terroristic type implantation, and in certain circumstances we do have stories where individuals actually had these foreign bodies removed from them, and in some cases it caused cancer. You brought to my attention some recent articles, mainly specifically with DARPA. Would you like to expand on that?
It's actually the American president, Barack Obama. He has brought forward this new initiative that is going to boost what they think is American economy. They have put forward a lot of money, $100 million, in an initiative that is called BRAIN. And BRAIN is an acronym that stands for Brain Research Through Advanced Innovative Neurotechnologies. Some of the people who are going to implement this is the National Institute of Health, DARPA, which is a military research branch, and a few private organizations and foundations. So this is a huge undertaking where they are going to map out the entire human brain. They compare it to the Genome Project, so they actually want an entire working model of the human brain. That's the goal. There's a lot of very disturbing ethical implications to this program. And when Obama had the Bioethics Commission put together, the National Institute of Health, who is going to lead this program, was actually giving specific warnings of the directions the neuroscience was going in at that point in time. And now, 2 years later, he's actually become the leader and is all advocating this. So first we are going to hear a little clip with Francis Collins from the NIH director, where he's issuing warnings of where the neuroscience community is heading. And after that, we are going to hear his endorsement, together with Barack Obama, of this new project that is taking this to a whole new level.
Dr. Francis Collins is the director of the National Institutes of Health.
Let me just say a word, though, about neuroimaging. Certainly the problem of incidental findings, though, is an enormous, obvious overlap with the genetic situation. MRI scans often give things you didn't expect, and often they're things you don't know what to do with. UBOs, as they're called, unidentified bright objects. Do you want to have one of those in your brain? Well, you might, and what are you going to do with that? Very difficult to say. And then getting again into forensics, lie detection. Certainly there are those who believe this will become a more accurate means of assessing when somebody is practicing deception, and then other available methods. Personality prediction or profiling, again, something that might be used in making decisions about who gets access to which particular kinds of jobs or in the military, or also could be used in courts of law. Neuromarketing, a little scary concept there, trying to assess when people are responding effectively to certain kinds of advertising or branding, or even who's got the brain that's going to be most susceptible to a particular kind of manipulation.
Now, UBOs, unidentified bright objects. You hear him clearly state this, folks. Do you want one in your brain? Well, you might. And he further defines why you might. He talks about being able to decide who has a propensity to do a specific type of job or do a specific type of career, who would be best to have access to confidential information. And what's most disturbing, one of the last statements he makes is, who is most susceptible to manipulation? I ask this question: why do we need to experiment with technologies to see how human beings can be manipulated? I think you see where this is going and where this might be going, but ultimately the only reason you'd want to manipulate a human being is because you want to utilize behavior modification. And let's just put it in plain text: controlling a human being, taking away their free will. Lars, it'd be interesting to hear what Francis Collins' take is now, now that they are getting funding and support by President Obama with this BRAIN program that they're implementing.
His warnings were given 2 years ago, and he's had a complete change of heart, and we are going to hear a little clip of how he endorses the BRAIN project that was just put forward last week by Barack Obama.
I'm happy to salute the proposal the President put forward today, the BRAIN Initiative. BRAIN stands for Brain Research through Advancing Innovative Neurotechnologies and aims to bring together nanoscience, engineering, and neurology to make sense of how the brain works, how those circuits in the brain allow us to do all the complicated things that currently we don't understand. This is going to be an effort of NIH and DARPA, some private foundations all working together. It is bold, it is audacious, it is going to take quite a few years. We have an amazing dream team putting together the details, and out of this is going to come a foundation for understanding the brain that we have dreamed of all through human history, and now it will happen.
We're also going to hear a couple of snippets of Barack Obama's speech and hear what he had to say about his new BRAIN initiative.
I'm Francis Collins, Director of the National Institutes of Health, NIH, and I am proud to have the honor of welcoming you here to the East Room of the White House for a very special scientific announcement by the President. It is a great personal privilege and a high honor to introduce our scientist-in-chief, the President of the United States, Barack Obama.
Thank you, everybody. Please have a seat. We still haven't unlocked the mystery of the 3 pounds of matter that sits between our ears. So today, scientists possess the capability to study individual neurons and figure out the main functions of certain areas of the brain. But a human brain contains almost 100 billion neurons, making trillions of connections. So there's this enormous mystery waiting to be unlocked. And the BRAIN Initiative will change that by giving scientists the tools they need to get a dynamic picture of the brain in action and better understand how we think and how we learn and how we remember. And that knowledge will be transformative. In the budget I will send to Congress next week, I will propose a significant investment by the National Institutes of Health, DARPA, and the National Science Foundation to help get this project off the ground. I'm directing my Bioethics Commission to make sure all of the research is being done in a responsible way, and we're also partnering with the private sector. And of course, none of this will be easy. If it was, we'd already know everything there was about how the brain works, and presumably my life would be simpler here. Could explain all kinds of things that go on in Washington, and we could prescribe something. So it won't be easy, but think about what we could do once we do crack this code. What if computers could respond to our thoughts, or our language barriers could come tumbling down? That's why this BRAIN initiative is so important. And if we keep taking bold steps like the one we're talking about to learn about the brain, then I'm confident America will continue to lead the world in the next frontiers of human understanding. And all of you are going to help us get there. So I'm very excited about this project. Francis, let's get to work.
As we heard, both the President and the Director of NIH, this effort is going to be spearheaded by NIH and DARPA, which is the US military. And we know that DARPA has had extensive research into neuroscience for quite some years now, and they are way beyond what the open scientific community are aware of. And I think that's also one of the reasons they are spearheading this project. They will guide the community towards rapid solutions And it was mentioned, and also by the US president, that they will take on the Bioethics Commission and present them with this new effort. But what we've seen so far from the Bioethics Commission is basically they are hooding the entire American population, because we know they have been presented with extreme malpractices and human rights violations, also regarding neuroscience technology. And they have not mentioned it with one word in any of their released papers. So I think this is all bogus that they claim that this is now sort of, they are pretending that this is all monitored by an ethics commission, but the ethics commission is deaf, dumb and blind to what's actually going on. So this is just a blue stamping of technology that will be extremely dangerous to society and potentially could undermine democracy and the governance as we know it today.
Probably most disturbing is the Presidential Bioethics Commission's mission, when it was created and given an assignment by President Obama, was to see whether non-consensual experimentation still existed today, particularly here in the United States. Now, we've been waiting for that conclusion in their investigation, and they've yet to do that to this day. We were supposed to hear it at the end of 2012, but we know that hasn't happened. I've been looking at some of the articles that were posted, and some of the brain research developments. The goal is to learn how to develop future information and communication technologies. And some of this is utilizing, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I find this very disturbing, is utilizing a neuroprosthetic down in the hippocampus level. So what are we really talking about here, Lars?
Well, this is actually fully functional. It has been developed, and basically a neuroprosthesis that can be implanted in the brain. So you could either, if you have a brain injury in the brain that will impair you mentally, you can get parts of your brain replaced now by electronics. Or you could, if you don't behave, basically get surgery, get parts of your brain removed, and government model of your brain will be installed that will ensure that you behave. And this was actually developed also under DARPA military, and the project at DARPA was called REMIND, Restorative Encoding Memory Integration Neural Device, REMIND. And this is basically a part of the brain that you can just cut out and replace with electronics.
That's amazing. So what we're really doing is they're skirting the real issues. They talk about all the positive aspects or the spinning of potential positive aspects of these technologies. Well, wouldn't it be great to be able to communicate with someone without having to dial a cell phone? We've heard this talk before in the past. Wouldn't it be great to be able to transmit data without utilizing computer in conventional ways that we've used in the past? Wouldn't it be great to operate and do specific security applications with computer products just through this type of technology? The things that aren't being told is, number one, how do we know that these things work? How did we get to that point? Obviously, we started in a lab somewhere, and I would assume with animals. But at some point, you had to transition over to humans. And this probably falls right in line what ISA Act is about. Again, this is being done non-consensually to a lot of victims, not only here in the United States, but throughout the globe. And what's so concerning about this is Francis Collins gave the warnings about some serious ethical issues, medical ethical issues that we would be faced with. And, you know, if they were doing their due diligence, if they were doing what they were supposed to do in good faith, we would have had that report by now. And we know what the answer is to that report. We had over 300 victims show up in New York to give testimony. I believe the Bioethics Commission is doing a great disservice, not only to those victims, but to every single American and every human being across this globe, because we know there is international influence in the Presidential Bioethics Commission.
You just mentioned one thing that I find is interesting. The communication between two brains directly. A couple of weeks ago came out that they have actually already achieved that full mind melding with rat brains, so they can now communicate directly. And there's also a British scientist called Kevin Warwick, who has been on the forefront of implant technology, electronics implanted in human beings. Unlike many other scientists, he's one of the scientists who actually does experiments on himself with volunteers. This is not a typical scenario. But he's actually at the moment looking for volunteers who will do a brain implant experiments together with him where he gets brain implants in his brain and another person gets brain implants in their brains to directly be able to read one another's thoughts. And that's actually the forefront that the Brits are at the moment. And at the same time, we have the United Kingdom's Royal Society that issued a warning that wars of the future might be decided through manipulation of people's minds. And this was an entire report that was issued. And it also warns that the potential military application of neuroscience breakthroughs needs to be regulated more closely. And we are not seeing anything like that at all anywhere in the world at the moment.
That is completely disturbing, frightening. This opens up a whole new paradigm as to what the future may hold. It directly affects you and I, Lars, now, but it affects every single human being, every child, every generation to come. What is it that we're really doing here? I've heard the statement, with great power comes great responsibility. We're really wiping away the ability for mankind to utilize their free will. Doesn't the potential exist to completely eliminate that characteristic of what we define as being human?
Yes, it does. I think there was a very, very dangerous paradigm shift that occurred when the Soviet Union broke down, because what we lost was the ideologies, and that basically means that we have a lot of politicians who are lacking instruments to control the population. They are basically administrators of governments, of countries, without any ideology. And what we see is a lot of powerless politicians out there who don't really know what they want. All they know and all they can agree on is that they want to control, because they are control freaks by nature. That's why they become politicians. And that's why we see a lot of those types of technologies being given a green light, and billions of dollars and euros, for that matter, to instrument technologies that can control crowds, like in policing, that can control the individuals through neuroscience technologies, and also radiation science technologies like microwaves, radio frequencies, etc. But I just want to point out the American project BRAIN that was just announced last week has a European counterpart. It's called the Human Brain Project, and is run out of Geneva in Switzerland. And it has more than 80 European institutions that are part of this. And this project is also all about trying to simulate an entire brain and create a supercomputer. So they want to create this neuromorphic computer, and they want to be able to completely mimic an entire brain, what it will lead to of communications and electronic devices, etc. They generally state that the program will draw on methods developed during empirical investigations of emerging technologies in genomics, neuroscience, synthetic biology, nanotechnology, and information and communication technologies. So we see this as a melt of gene manipulations, neuroscience, synthetic biology. We know that they already have synthetic electronics that are based on biology, materials that are not traceable in the human body. Nanotechnology, where things and electronics can be shrunk down to a size where they are no longer detectable. That all becomes communications technology to control and influence people.
So basically what we have happening here is we see a transition where the elites and corporations will become richer and wealthier. Mm-hmm. They destroy the middle class and the poor, and that's across all demographics. And I think everyone needs to wake up here, and we thank Karen and all who bring this marathon weekend together to give it this platform to really tell the truth. And basically this is what we're about, exposing the truth, wanting the truth, and wanting the right thing to happen. And all we're saying is that we want the right to preserve free will, our free will, the free will of our future, our children, our children's children, your loved ones. We want a future where everyone has an opportunity to do as they please in a good way. But what this is creating is basically a social paradigm where all there will be is those who are the elite, and then those who are the controlled and forever enslaved, basically a human robot environment.
Yes, I agree. But what the people in control of this don't realize is that by trying to bring uniformity towards mankind, we are actually going into a new dark ages. Because what makes the human being exceptional in comparison to all other beings is that we are so diverse. And it's actually our diversity that bring forward new innovations, new things, new ways of thinking, new ways of solving problems. By trying to make this into a homogeneous mass, they are basically limiting the potential of the human race, and we are entering a new dark age. That is the potential of what will happen.
And basically what we have is a hive mentality, a hive-type existence, and that would be a shame.
Yeah.
That would be a horrible, horrific travesty that I see coming. Well, I know we're just about out of time, and again, we encourage everyone to stand up against these institutions of oppression. And basically, as we have always stated, you're either a terrorist or a treasonist if you condone these types of things being utilized against human beings, particularly against their consent, and condone the torture and the suffering. And that's what the International Center Against the Abuse of Covert Technologies is about. We're an institution that helps individuals obtain objective evidence to the fact that they are being exposed to these types of technologies. And I just want to tell everyone that on May 25th, 2013, in Campbell, California, we'll be hosting a Northern California meeting, and that will be at 1 West Campbell Avenue in Campbell, California. Go to our website at www.icaact.org so you can get the information. Please reserve. Seating is limited. It's going to be a great meeting. We will be doing RF scanning, and in addition, we will be discussing potential coping mechanisms against electronic terrorism. Until then, I'm your host, Jesse Beltran, and
Lars Drudgaard.
until next time, thank you for listening.